Guys, real quick, I want you to look around, please. This is a beautiful sight. There are a lot of people at this 10 a.m. Mass. And I know that we are now one less Mass, but this is one of the great fruits of going to less Masses, is that we have a more full church. The sound of children, better singing, more singing. And it presents a good problem, right? That we now have to squeeze a little bit more together, okay? And that's a good problem to have. We are Catholic. We are still only probably a little bit over 2/3 full in our church. We could still absolutely seat at least 100 more people in our church. And I just saw a family walk in all the way forward, all the way back, and no one moved to let them be seated. Okay, please, this is a kind of a new good problem for us. Please just pay attention. If you see people that are just showing up to Mass and they're walking forward, they're looking around for a seat, please just kind of keep your head on a swivel and scoot in, especially heeding our ushers' requests if they're asking you to scoot in so that people can be seated. This is a great problem, all right? This is a great problem, and this is what we want. A couple of years ago, or maybe a year ago, I received a text message from a mother, a parishioner here. And she sent a recording of her then second grade daughter. And I may have shared this story with folks before, but this second grade girl, it was early December, late November, and it was a cold and rainy night. And in this video that this mother recorded, her daughter was out in the cold, in the rain, with like a jacket on, singing and dancing and kind of in this screechy voice, shouting to really no one in particular, but to anyone listening, how wonderful she felt. A second grade girl, out in the cold, in the rain, dancing for no one in particular, but for our Lord. And a couple hours earlier, that little girl had made her first confession. She had just encountered our Lord's mercy in the sacrament of confession for the first time in her life. And as any parent knows, as any catechist knows, anyone that's ever been involved in preparing a second grader for making their first confession, that experience does not start there. It doesn't start with this great joy. It starts with a lot of fear. It starts with a lot of nervousness. Because this child is being told they are going to confess their sins to Jesus Christ through a priest. They're going to make known to a fellow sinner their sins, all for the sake of receiving Jesus' mercy. That's where it starts. And for a second grader, that can be a traumatic thought. They're filled with fear. In their young life, it might be the most fear they've experienced, the most trauma they've kind of experienced, just in thought, kind of preparing for that moment. But when God's mercy hits, what is one of the most fear-filled thoughts and moments of their life gives way to one of the most magnificent moments: God's mercy and forgiveness. Now multiply that exponentially, and we might have some idea of what that woman caught in adultery was experiencing, was experiencing in the gospel. This woman was literally fearing for her life. She had been caught in a grave sin in the very act of committing adultery, and she was now in the middle of a bunch of scribes and Pharisees who had the law on their side. She was literally fearing for her life, knowing that she deserved to be stoned to death. But she's thrust in front of our Lord, in front of God Himself for a moment of judgment, literally standing before our Lord on His judgment seat. And she hears the words, "Neither do I condemn you. Neither do I condemn you." And what must have been, certainly would have been, the most terrorizing, fearful moment of her life gives way to the most magnificent, all through the power of our Lord's mercy. Guys, if you have not had a chance yet to experience the transformative power of our Lord's mercy in this Lenten season through the sacrament of confession, go. Do not let this Lenten season pass by, this season of His mercy, this season where we walk with Him and commemorate the very events that gave us His mercy in such abundant ways, through His passion, suffering, and death, and gives us this great gift of that singular sacrament of His mercy, that where we not only hear from Him, "Neither do I condemn you," but the very words, "I absolve you." As if your sin and my sin never took place. We are restored to that moment right after baptism. Do not let this season of Lent go by without receiving that mercy. And we know that going to confession can be a little nerve-wracking. It can cause a little fear in us. But I promise you, and if you don't want to take the word of our gospel today and the experience of this sinful woman caught in adultery, take the experience of that second grader. If nothing else, second graders are honest. And she was expressing the truth of the matter. That a fearful, nerve-wracking situation gives way to a magnificent and transformative experience through our Lord's mercy. And we can talk about how Catholics have to go to confession at least once a year. Our veteran Catholics talk about doing their Easter duty, making sure that they go to confession during the Lenten season. We can talk about how there's never been a saint that walked this earth, there's never been a saint in heaven that did not become a saint through our Lord's mercy, by using that sacrament of confession on a very regular basis. We can talk about all the reasons why we need to, why we must go to confession. But the gospel today gives us an opportunity to contemplate why we should want to. Why we should want to go to confession. Because for centuries, and for many of us here, it has been transforming sinners into saints. It has been transforming burdened lives and lives weighed down with guilt and anxiety and worries. It has been transforming those lives into those of magnificence, those of joy. This is the power of our Lord's mercy. And He freely offers it to each one of us this Lenten season.